A stolen kiss beneath the stars. A letter that never arrived. 6 years of wounds built on lies. When childhood love turns into forbidden passion, how many scandals can a lady endure? And when the truth finally comes to light, will it be too late for two shattered hearts to recognize each other? Welcome to the lady of my dreams. Before we dive into this breathtaking story, if you love epic romances full of passion and twists, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to know, and now, let's return to where it all begins. Somerset countryside, England, summer of 1751. There was something in the air that June morning that made Charlotte Alden feel restless. Perhaps it was the unusual warmth that had come earlier that year. Or perhaps it was the way her peach-colored muslin dress clung lightly to her skin as she galloped across the fields separating the Alden estate from the Harcourt lands. Or perhaps, and she suspected this was exactly it was because she knew Benjamin would be waiting for her in their usual spot. Charlotte was 17, her copper-red hair gleaming like liquid fire beneath the sun. Her blue-green eyes carried that familiar spark of someone who had never been content to be merely decorative. She read Shakespeare's sonnets and Alexander Pope's poems in secret, rode without a chaperone to her mother's horror, and held opinions on politics that made her father alternate between pride and concern. The Alden family was old nobility, the kind of lineage that came with vast lands, respectable titles, and lately, financial troubles her father tried to hide behind forced smiles at social dinners. The Harcourts, on the other hand, possessed considerable wealth and education, respected in the region but without the centuries of aristocracy weighing on their name. Not that it mattered to Charlotte. Not when it came to Benjamin. She spotted him before she even reached the centuries-old oak that marked the boundary between their estates. He was leaning against the trunk, an open book in his hands, his dark brown hair tousled by the wind. At 19, Benjamin Harcourt had that dangerous combination of sharp intelligence and natural irreverence that made society mothers wrinkle their noses and their daughters secretly. He looked up at the sound of Athena's gallop, Charlotte's mare, and a lazy smile curved his lips. "You're 20 minutes late, Alden. Losing your touch." Charlotte dismounted with the grace of years of practice, tying the reins to a low branch. Well, some of us have to deal with persistent tutors and mothers who believe embroidery is an essential survival skill. And you, of course, argued eloquently. Obviously. I told her if England were invaded, my ability to embroider violets wouldn't save us, but my aim with a bow might. Benjamin laughed, that easy laugh she had known since they were 8 and 11. And what did Lady Alden say to that? That I am a trial sent by God to test her patience. He closed the book and stood, and Charlotte noticed, not for the first time that summer, how he had changed. Broader shoulders, a sharper jaw, the way he looked at her. Different, as if he truly saw her. "What are you reading?" The question slipped out more to break the sudden silence between them than from real curiosity. "Milton, Paradise Lost." "Oh, light reading for a summer morning," says the girl who brought Rousseau to our last meeting. "Rousseau is fascinating. Rousseau is dangerous, especially for young ladies of good families who should be thinking about, well, appropriate things." Charlotte stepped closer, her eyes sparkling with challenge. "And who says I can't think about both?" The air shifted subtly. Benjamin studied her for a moment too long to be casual, his green eyes tracing her face in a way that made Charlotte's heart stumble. "You're different this summer." "Different how?" He hesitated, and for the first time in her life, Charlotte saw Benjamin Harcourt at a loss for words. "I don't know, just different." Charlotte felt heat rise up her neck and into her cheeks. She turned quickly, feigning sudden interest in the book he had left on the grass. "And you're even more insufferable, so I suppose we're even." But she was smiling. And he knew it. They spent the morning as they always did, talking about everything and nothing, debating poetry and politics, laughing at inside jokes accumulated over the years. Benjamin casually mentioned his father's plans to send him away to learn the family business in other regions, perhaps even America. Charlotte pretended the thought didn't bother her. But something in her chest tightened painfully. When the sun was high and Charlotte knew she had to return before her absence was noticed, Benjamin lightly caught her arm. "Charlotte, wait." She stopped, her heart racing for no apparent reason. "Tonight, the ball at my house. You'll be there, won't you?" "All of Somerset will, Benjamin. Your parents practically commanded half of England to attend." "I'm not asking about all of Somerset. I'm asking about you." The way he said it, low, intense, as if her answer were the only thing that mattered in the world, made something tighten in Charlotte's chest. "I'll be there." He smiled, and there was something in that smile she had never seen before. "Then save a dance for me. Just one? As many as you'll allow." Charlotte mounted Athena, but before leaving she looked back. Benjamin still stood beneath the oak watching her, and the intensity of that gaze set something inside her ablaze. She galloped home with her heart pounding, not fully understanding what had shifted between them, but knowing, with that instinctive, terrifying certainty, that something fundamental had changed. Night arrived wrapped in magic. The Harcourt estate was transformed. Japanese lanterns hung from trees, casting golden light over the gardens. Violins played softly, as Somerset's elite mingled across the lawn in silk gowns and impeccable coats. The air smelled of roses and wine and summer. Charlotte stepped down from the carriage alongside her parents. Her mother, Lady Margaret Alden, immediately adjusted the shawl on her shoulders. "Behave yourself tonight, Charlotte. Half of society will be here, and you know how quick tongues are to judge." Her father, Sir Richard Alden, offered his arm to his wife with a nearly imperceptible sigh. Charlotte noticed the lines of strain around his eyes, the way his shoulders seemed to carry an invisible weight. The financial struggles he tried to hide were beginning to show. "I'll go greet the hosts." Charlotte slipped away before her mother could say anything more. But it wasn't the hosts she was searching for. Her eyes swept the crowd until they found him. Benjamin stood near the veranda, speaking with a group of gentlemen, but there was a tension in his posture, as if he were only pretending to listen, his eyes constantly straying, searching. Their eyes met across the sea of people, and everything else disappeared. Charlotte saw the exact moment he excused himself from his companions, the moment he began crossing the lawn toward her. Each step seemed to last an eternity. When he finally stopped in front of her, there was something wild in his eyes despite his controlled posture. "Lady Charlotte Alden." His voice came out hoarse, far too formal for what they were to each other. "Mr. Harcourt, you look—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "Absolutely stunning," and she was. The ivory dress with delicate floral embroidery enhanced every curve, every graceful line. Her hair was pinned in an elaborate chignon, but rebellious curls had already escaped, framing her face and brushing lightly against her bare shoulders. "You're presentable too." There was humor in her eyes. "Only presentable? Don't let it go to your head, Benjamin. Your ego is already big enough." He laughed, but there was tension in that laugh. "Dance with me," it wasn't a request. It was almost a plea. Charlotte held out her hand, and when his fingers closed around hers, she felt that touch reverberate through her entire body in a way that should have been impossible. After all, they had touched thousands of times over the years. But this was completely different. Benjamin led her to the center of the lawn where other couples were already dancing. The country dance began, soft and enveloping. He placed his hand in hers, properly but with a possessive firmness, and they began moving through the steps. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply moved together, perfectly in sync, as if they had practiced their whole lives. "You're too quiet." "That worries me. I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About how everything feels different tonight." His hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Different how?" Charlotte raised her eyes to meet his. "Green fire meeting blue-green storm. You know how." He stopped dancing. Right in the middle of the country dance, surrounded by dozens of other couples, Benjamin Harcourt simply stopped. "Come with me." "Benjamin, we're in the middle of the dance." "Please." There was something so urgent, so desperate in that word, that Charlotte found herself agreeing before she even processed what she was doing. He intertwined his fingers with hers and led her away from the lanterns, away from the music, into the perfumed darkness of the gardens where roses climbed the trellises, and the world felt distant and unreal. They walked in silence until they reached the ancient oak, the same one where they had spent the morning. the same one where they had spent hundreds of mornings over the years. But this time, when Benjamin turned to her, there was nothing boyish left in his eyes. "Charlotte, I need to tell you something. And I know I'll probably ruin everything between us, but if I don't say it now, I'll go mad." Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Then say it. I love you." The words came out raw, honest, desperate. "Not as a friend. Not as someone who grew up beside you. I love you in a way that scares me, that keeps me up at night, that makes every damned moment away from you feel like a waste. And I know our families are different. I know there are expectations on you, but Charlotte," his voice faltered, "I can't pretend you're just my friend anymore when every fiber of my being wants to make you mine for real. Charlotte, you are the lady of my dreams." The silence that followed was deafening. Charlotte looked at him, at the boy she had known since childhood, now transformed into a man who looked at her as if she were the sun and moon and all the stars combined. "You're an idiot." Benjamin froze, his face closing as if she had slapped him. His shoulders tensed, his breath caught in his throat. "You're an idiot because it took you this long to say it, Ben." For an eternal second, neither of them moved. Then Benjamin reacted. He pulled her to him, one hand sliding to the nape of her neck, the other at the curve of her waist, and he kissed her. Slowly, deeply, as if he had all the time in the world, and at the same time as if each second were too precious to waste. The kiss was years of restraint unraveling, a friendship transforming into something bigger, more dangerous, more necessary. Charlotte felt her knees weaken, her heart race, the entire world shrinking to that moment, that touch, that man. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless, trembling. "I love you too. I think I always have. I was just too scared to admit it." Benjamin smiled, that radiant smile she knew so well, and kissed her again, slower this time, savoring each second as if it were precious and fragile. "I'm going to ask for your hand, this week. I'll speak to your father. Do it properly." Charlotte smiled, remembering conversations they had months earlier, before her debut in London society. "Remember when you said you wouldn't marry in your first season? And you said you wouldn't marry until you figured out who you were," she replied, her eyes bright with amusement and emotion. "Looks like we were both very emphatic in our declarations." "Well, the season is over," he said, drawing her a little closer. "And now I'm claiming my right to change my mind." "Oh, really? And have you figured it out? Who you are?" His green eyes locked on hers with a breathtaking intensity. "I have. I'm a man completely lost without you." Charlotte laughed, her eyes glistening with emotion, and pulled him into another kiss. This one gentler, deeper, full of whispered promises between souls who had always known each other. When they parted, she kept her hands on his face. "I know there are complications. I know our families will have opinions. But I'll prove I can make you happy, that I can take care of you." Charlotte wanted to believe it could be that simple, but something about her father's worried expression lately, something in the whispered conversations between her parents, planted a small seed of fear in her chest. "And if it's not enough?" He drew her closer, his green eyes burning with intensity. "Then I'll make it enough, because I'm not going to let them marry you off to anyone else when you're mine. I'm yours? Completely, irrevocably, forever if you'll let me." Charlotte smiled, her heart so full it felt impossible to contain. "Then yes, I'm yours." They kissed again, lost in each other, oblivious to the world, trading secrets and confessions and whispers under the moonlight, oblivious to the shadow watching them from the nearby trees. Thomas Winters, Charlotte's cousin, saw everything. The kiss, the declaration, the promise. He was 24, with a narrow face and eyes that always calculated angles and opportunities. The Alden fortune, even with recent troubles, and was still considerable, and as a close cousin, Thomas had always believed he had certain rights over Charlotte's future. Seeing her in Benjamin Harcourt's arms wasn't merely inconvenient. It was unacceptable. The smile that curved Thomas's lips held nothing of joy. It was, in fact, cruel, calculated. He turned silently and disappeared into the darkness, already laying out his plans. Charlotte floated home that night with her heart singing. She could barely sleep, replaying every word, every touch, every promise they had exchanged. Benjamin loved her, and she loved him. Finally, everything made sense. By the time the sun rose, she was already awake, staring out of her bedroom window, imagining when he would come speak with her father, imagining the future they could build together. That was when the maid knocked on the door, her face pale. "My lady, your father wants to see you immediately." In the study, something in the woman's tone made Charlotte's stomach twist, but she pushed the feeling aside. Perhaps Benjamin had already arrived. Perhaps it was good news. She dressed quickly and went downstairs, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. She stopped at the door to the study. Through the side window, she could see the road leading to the Harcourt estate. Then she smiled and opened the door. Sir Richard Alden's study smelled of brandy and poorly hidden despair. Charlotte stopped in the middle of the room, her heart still racing from the happiness of the night before, unaware of the storm about to break over her. Her father stood behind the desk, his shoulders tense, his face marked by lines that seemed to have deepened overnight. Her mother, Lady Margaret, sat stiffly, her hands clasped too tightly in her lap, and Thomas, her cousin Thomas, leaned against the window, watching the road as if waiting for someone. "Father, what happened?" Sir Richard did not look at her directly. Instead, he fixed his eyes on some point above her head, and Charlotte noticed how his hands trembled slightly as he reached for a glass of brandy. "Sit down, Charlotte. I'd rather stand." "I said sit." The sharp tone made Charlotte recoil. Her father had never spoken to her like that before. She slowly sat in the indicated chair, her hands suddenly cold despite the summer heat drifting through the window. Lady Margaret spoke first, her voice carefully controlled but carrying something Charlotte couldn't quite name. Fear, perhaps. Or shame. "You were seen last night, in the gardens, with young Harcourt." Charlotte's blood froze, but she kept her expression firm. "We were only talking." "Talking," Thomas repeated softly, turning from the window. There was something in his eyes that made Charlotte's skin prickle. "An interesting way to describe what I witnessed, dear cousin." Charlotte turned to him, her heart racing. "You spied on us?" "I was taking the air when I heard voices. Naturally, I worried for your safety. Imagine my surprise to find you, perfectly well accompanied." The way he said it, the slight smile curving his lips, made something twist in Charlotte's stomach. "Thomas came to us immediately," Sir Richard continued, his voice heavy, "as any responsible relative would, and he informed us he was not the only one to witness it." Charlotte went very still. "What do you mean?" "There were others in the gardens, Charlotte," Thomas explained, pacing slowly around the room like a predator circling prey. "A married couple who also decided to take the air. Servants circulating with trays. You and young Harcourt were not exactly discreet." Horror began seeping through Charlotte's fog of confusion. "How many people?" "Enough," Lady Margaret answered crisply. "Enough that your reputation hangs by a thread, Charlotte. Enough that we had to act quickly." "Act how?" That was when her father finally looked directly at her, and what Charlotte saw in his eyes terrified her. It wasn't anger. It was resignation. It was the look of a man who had made an impossible decision, and now had to live with the consequences. "Charlotte, our family is facing difficulties. Financial difficulties that I tried to hide from you. Father, what does that have to do with—" "Let me finish." The silence that followed was oppressive. "Your grandfather's investments. The poor harvests of the last few years. Decisions I made that did not go as planned. We are on the brink of ruin, Charlotte. Complete ruin." Charlotte felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "That can't be true. There's always been money. We've lived on appearances," Lady Margaret cut in. "Appearances maintained at an ever-growing cost. But the debts, Charlotte, they've come due, and there's no holding them back anymore." Sir Richard stepped closer, kneeling before his daughter. Charlotte noticed the deep shadows under his eyes, how he seemed to have aged 10 years in just a few weeks. "There is a solution. The only possible solution. Lord Edward Ashford. He's made an offer." Charlotte's heart stopped. "No, he is willing to marry you and, as part of the marriage agreement, settle all our debts. All of them, Charlotte. It's an incredibly generous offer." "Generous?" Charlotte's voice came out strangled. "You're selling me." "Don't be dramatic," Lady Margaret retorted. "Marriages have always been arrangements between families. You're not the first young woman to wed for practical reasons. But I don't love him. I love Benjamin. The silence that followed was deafening. Benjamin Harcourt cannot save us, Sir Richard said at last, his voice weary. And even if he could, he has no title. No lineage. And after what happened last night, after what happened, we had to act quickly, Thomas interjected, returning to stand near the window. Lord Edward was already interested in you, Charlotte. But once the rumors began to spread this morning, we needed security, so we sealed the agreement. This very morning, before he could change his mind, Charlotte shot to her feet, the chair nearly toppling over. You've already arranged it? Without even consulting me? You forced our hand, Lady Margaret replied coldly. Your reckless behavior last night left us no choice. I won't do it. I'll speak with Benjamin. We'll find a solution, Benjamin Harcourt, Thomas said softly, dangerously, laid hands on you inappropriately. It was witnessed by respectable people. If those witnesses decide to speak publicly, the consequences for him would be severe. Charlotte froze. What are you saying? Thomas stepped closer, his eyes cold and calculating. I'm saying I had to be very persuasive this morning. Very generous. The people who saw you needed incentives to remain discreet. Financial incentives. Your family has no means for that, Charlotte. I had to use mine. You bribed them. I protected you. Protected your family. And protected young Harcourt from accusations that could completely destroy his future. Understanding crept in slowly, like poison spreading. You're blackmailing me. I'm presenting facts, Thomas corrected softly. Accept the marriage to Lord Edward, and the witnesses will remain silent. Benjamin will go to America with his father as planned, with his reputation intact. Refuse and, well, I can't control what people will choose to do with the information they hold. And I'm quite sure the Harcourt family would not appreciate a scandal affecting their business. The horror Charlotte felt was absolute. Her own family was using the man she loved as leverage. Any resistance, any attempt to fight could destroy Benjamin. You can't do this. It's already done, Sir Richard said, and there was something broken in his voice. The agreement with Lord Edward is signed. The wedding will take place in 2 weeks. Charlotte, I'm sorry, but it's this or lose everything. And I cannot let your mother fall into misery because of my failures. Charlotte looked at her father, then at her mother, then at Thomas. She searched for some sign that this was negotiable, that there was another way out. But she found only determination, fear, and in Thomas's eyes something dangerously close to satisfaction. 2 days, she whispered. Give me 2 days to process this. You have until tomorrow at noon, Thomas replied. Lord Edward expects formal confirmation. After that, if there's hesitation, he may reconsider. And then the witnesses. Well, I can no longer guarantee their silence. Charlotte staggered out of the study. She climbed the stairs on trembling legs, entered her room and locked the door. Benjamin. She needed to warn Benjamin. She needed to tell him what was happening. With trembling hands, she grabbed paper and quill. She began to write, the words spilling out desperate and confused, trying to explain the inexplicable. But after 3 attempts, she realized the horrible truth. Any letter she sent would be intercepted. Her mother would certainly order all correspondence monitored. And if Thomas discovered she had tried to contact Benjamin, the threats would become reality. She tore up the letters and cried until there were no tears left. While Charlotte battled her despair behind her locked door, Benjamin Harcourt was preparing for the most important moment of his life. The conversation with his father that morning had gone better than expected. Yes, there were concerns about the differences between the families, about how society would react, but there was also genuine understanding. His father saw the love in his eyes, and in the end had given his blessing. If this is what you want, son, do it right. Speak to Sir Richard officially, today. Benjamin planned to do exactly that. He dressed in his best coat, rehearsed the words carefully. He had enough resources to keep her comfortable. He had solid plans for the future, and above all, he had true love. The ride to the Alden estate felt like it took an eternity and a second at the same time. By the time he arrived, the sun was already beginning to decline, casting long shadows over the perfectly kept gardens. A servant received him at the door, his expression carefully neutral. Good morning, Mr. Harcourt. How may I help you? I would like to speak with Sir Richard Alden. It's a matter of utmost importance. The servant hesitated for a barely perceptible moment before bowing. "Please wait here." Benjamin waited in the entrance hall, his nerves tightening with each passing minute. He looked around, searching for some sign of Charlotte, but the house was far too quiet. Almost funereal. When the servant returned, there was something different in his posture. "Sir Richard will see you in the library." Benjamin was led through familiar corridors. He had been there dozens of times over the years, but this time everything felt different, colder, more distant. Sir Richard stood near the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He did not turn when Benjamin entered. "Sir Richard, good morning. Thank you for seeing me. I've come to speak about a matter that—" "I know why you're here, young Harcourt." The tone cut Benjamin's words in half. "Then you know my intentions regarding Charlotte, and I would like to—" "Your intentions arrived too late." Benjamin felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Excuse me?" Sir Richard finally turned, and there was something in his eyes that made Benjamin's blood run cold. "My daughter is betrothed. The engagement to Lord Edward Ashford was formalized this morning." Charlotte accepted his proposal gladly. The words took a moment to make sense. When they finally did, Benjamin felt as if he had been punched. "That's not possible. Charlotte and I, we love each other. Last night my daughter acted recklessly, driven by youthful passion," Sir Richard interrupted firmly. "Today, with daylight and reason prevailing, she made the right choice." No, she wouldn't do that." "Let me speak to her. Please, I just need—" "That would be extremely improper. Charlotte is a betrothed lady now. She must not keep company with other men who are not her fiancé." Benjamin stepped forward, his voice heavy with desperation. "Sir Richard, with all due respect, I can give Charlotte a dignified life. I have resources and intend to expand my holdings soon with new investments and—" Young Harcourt, stop. The tone was not cruel, but it carried a final firmness. Sir Richard sighed, and for the first time looked less like an aristocrat and more like a tired man. "You're a well-intentioned young man, I don't doubt it. But let's speak plainly. You have modest means, yes, but you have no title, no social standing my daughter requires. And forgive my directness, but a 19-year-old with future investment plans does not provide the immediate security our situation demands." Benjamin felt the words like blows. "I love her truly, and she loves me. I know she does. I just need to talk to her, just 5 minutes to—" "There will be no conversation. The decision is made, and it was made by Charlotte. She's a clever young woman. She understood what must be done and chose the security Lord Edward offers. But I can offer security. With time, I can—" "Time is a luxury we don't have," Sir Richard cut in, true pain flickering in his voice. "And Charlotte knows this. She is no longer a dreamy girl, Mr. Harcourt. She's grown. She made a woman's choice." "You are not that choice." The words were like knives. "I don't believe it. Charlotte wouldn't. She wouldn't abandon me like this." Sir Richard sighed, and for the first time there was something like compassion in his eyes. But it was cold, distant compassion. "Young Harcourt, I understand this is hard. Youthful passion always feels eternal when you're in it. But Charlotte is a pragmatic young lady. She understood what had to be done and made her choice. I suggest you accept it with dignity and move on. I'm sure you'll find suitable substitutes for your affection soon." Benjamin felt anger burn in his chest, but he knew showing it would be useless. "I would like to hear it from her. Directly. That will not be possible. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to." "Sir Richard." "Good afternoon, Mr. Harcourt." The dismissal was clear, final. Benjamin was practically escorted out of the estate, his world crumbling with every step. He mounted his horse and rode aimlessly, trying to process the impossible. Charlotte had accepted another man. She had chosen title and security over him, or had she? Something didn't add up. The way she had kissed him, the words she had whispered, the promise in her eyes. He spent the rest of the afternoon riding, his mind burning with possibilities. Maybe she was being forced. Maybe she had no choice. Maybe she was waiting for him to save her. When night fell and reason returned, Benjamin made a decision. He wrote a letter. It took hours to find the right words, tearing up 3 versions before finally crafting something that expressed everything he needed to say. "Charlotte, I don't know what happened, but I refuse to believe you chose to marry Lord Edward freely. If you're being forced, if there's any chance you still love me, meet me before dawn 2 days from now under our oak tree. I'll have 2 horses, provisions, and passage to America. We can marry on the way and start over far from all of this. I know it sounds mad, but the real madness would be letting you marry another man when I know we belong to each other. I'll be waiting, always yours, Benjamin. He called one of the younger servants in the house, a 15-year-old boy who had always been loyal. I need you to deliver this directly to Lady Charlotte Alden. No one else can see it. It's crucial. Yes, sir. You can count on me. The boy set off at dawn, the letter tucked safely inside his coat. He didn't get very far. Thomas Winters was waiting on the road, as if he knew exactly what would happen. Boy, where are you off to in such a hurry? The boy hesitated, his eyes wide. I have an urgent delivery, sir. From whom? From Mr. Harcourt, sir. For Lady Charlotte, Thomas smiled. It was a cold, calculated smile. Let me see. Sir, I was instructed to deliver it directly to... Let me see. There was something in Thomas's voice that made the boy's blood run cold. He handed over the letter with trembling hands. Thomas read it calmly, then folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. You'll go back and tell Mr. Harcourt that you delivered the letter directly to Lady Charlotte. You'll say that she read it and sent no reply. Understood? But sir, I can't lie to... Thomas stepped closer, his voice dropping dangerously. You can and you will, unless you want me to tell your father about the money you owe at the tavern. How much was it again? £5? I'm sure your father would be very interested to know how a servant racks up debts like that. The boy paled. How do you... I know many things. Now, will you do as I said? Or would you prefer I make your life far more complicated? I'll do it. Thomas smiled and tossed him a coin. Good boy, now go. And remember, you placed it right into her hands. The servant returned to the Harcourt estate half an hour later, pale and trembling, but delivered the lie. I delivered it personally, sir. Lady Charlotte read it, but she didn't send a reply. Benjamin felt his heart tighten, but he nodded. Thank you. You may go. And so began the torturous wait. Charlotte, locked in her room under her mother's constant watch, had no idea Benjamin had tried to reach her. She didn't know about the letter that never arrived. She didn't know he was planning to save her. All she knew was the deafening silence, the complete absence of any sign from him. And with each passing day, the pain grew deeper. He hadn't come to ask for her hand as he promised. He hadn't tried. He hadn't fought for her. Maybe Thomas was right. Maybe Benjamin was just a dreamer who gave up when things grew difficult. 3 days later, the announcements began circulating through society. The marriage of Lady Charlotte Alden and Lord Edward Ashford would be celebrated in 1 week. Benjamin saw the announcement in the morning paper and felt something inside him die. She hadn't appeared under the oak. She hadn't replied to his letter, and now she was publicly betrothed. The message was clear. She had made her choice. That afternoon, a messenger brought a note. Benjamin recognized the handwriting, or thought he did. It was slightly shaky, different, but unmistakable. Benjamin, my wedding will take place soon as planned. I deeply value the friendship we cultivated since childhood. It was a precious gift I will always cherish. But now we go our separate ways. Soon I will be Lady Ashford, and that is the future I have chosen. I wish you every happiness on your journey to America. Please let us not attempt to see or write to each other again. It will be better this way for us both. Always your friend, Charlotte, he read it once. Then again, he searched for some hidden code, some sign it was forged. But the words were there in her hand. She was saying goodbye. Charlotte, too, received a letter, delivered by a maid, sent by Thomas with a smile that never reached her eyes. Charlotte, I heard of your engagement. I confess I was surprised, but deep down, I always knew you would choose title and status over love. I'm leaving for America in a few days. Please don't write or seek me out again. Goodbye, Benjamin. She read it and felt her heart shatter into pieces so small she doubted they could ever be put back together. He knew. And he was leaving without a fight. In the days that followed, constantly watched by her mother, Charlotte, who had still been reluctant even after the public announcement, finally went quiet and yielded. I accept. I will marry Lord Edward. The relief on her parents' faces was immediate, but all Charlotte felt was emptiness. Benjamin drifted through the following days in a haze. He made preparations for the voyage to America mechanically, without feeling. He needed to leave as quickly as possible, or he would suffocate from grief. On the day of the ship's departure, he boarded without looking back. He didn't see Charlotte being escorted to the church for her wedding. He didn't see the tears she tried to hide beneath the veil. He didn't see Thomas watching it all with a satisfied smile, and neither of them knew the letters they had received were carefully orchestrated lies. Two hearts that loved each other deeply, torn apart by deceit and manipulation. The ocean between them would grow wider each day. And it would take 6 long years before the truth began to emerge from the shadows. On the eve of her wedding, Charlotte burned nearly all of Benjamin's letters and notes. She watched the flames devour years of friendship. But she kept one. An old note. "If I ever lose my way, Charlotte, find me, promise?" Brie. She hid it inside the family Bible, between the pages of the Song of Songs. She didn't know why. Perhaps because some stubborn part of her refused to let him go completely. Or perhaps because deep down, a voice whispered that something was wrong, that there was more to the story. But it was too late to discover the truth. Tomorrow she would marry Lord Edward Ashford, and Benjamin Harcourt would be on the other side of the ocean. 2 young souls in love, separated by lies they did not yet know existed. The wedding took place on a cold October morning. Charlotte wore white, but she felt covered in ashes. Lord Edward Ashford was exactly as everyone said, respectable, educated, a gentleman in every sense. He treated her with formal courtesy, almost reverence, as if she were fine porcelain that might break if handled too firmly. Perhaps he was right. The months dragged on in predictable routine. Silent dinners, polite conversations about the weather, about investments, about the estates. Edward was kind but distant. There was no cruelty in him, but neither was there warmth. The marriage was functional, nothing more. Charlotte learned to exist inside that emptiness. She felt less and less herself. She played her role, polished, polite, and not happy. Until 6 months later, she discovered she was with child. For the first time since her separation from Benjamin, she felt something beyond numbness. A small spark of hope. Perhaps she could build something good there. Perhaps a child would bring meaning to that hollow life. Edward was genuinely pleased. He smiled more in those weeks than in all the previous months combined. He had always wanted heirs, and Charlotte could see dreams taking shape in his eyes. For a few brief weeks, it almost seemed they could be happy. Then came the storm. 7 months into her pregnancy, thunder shaking the windows. Sudden devastating pain. The doctor arrived too late. The baby was born too small, too fragile. A boy with dark hair like his father's who breathed for only a few hours before he simply stopped. Charlotte held her son's tiny body and felt something inside her die as well. Edward didn't know how to handle her grief. He offered empty words of comfort, but kept his distance as if mourning were contagious. The rift between them, which the baby had begun to fill, became an unbridgeable chasm. 2 years dragged by in near silence. Then the winter of 1754 came harsher than usual, and Edward contracted pneumonia. Within 2 weeks he was buried 6 feet under. Charlotte, at 20 years old, wore mourning for the second time. Full black heavy veil, and she discovered that mourning had unexpected advantages. She could refuse visits, decline invitations, live with a freedom she had never had before. The fortune she inherited was considerable. Lands, solid investments, and a magnificent house in London that Edward had acquired only months before his death. With no children to inherit, everything passed to her, and with it came something Charlotte had never expected to have: control over her own life. She moved to London, to the Grosvenor Square house. It was far too spacious for a single woman, but Charlotte enjoyed the space. She enjoyed the chosen solitude, so different from the imposed solitude of marriage. It was Lady Agatha who insisted on moving in with her. Her maternal aunt, widowed at 40 and far too spirited for social conventions, appeared at the door with 3 trunks and a simple declaration: "I will not let you rot alone in this house, dear. Someone must make sure you still remember how to smile." Charlotte didn't have the energy to argue, and secretly she was grateful for her aunt's pleasant company. The months in London brought a semblance of peace. Charlotte managed her estates with a competence that surprised even her lawyers. She read voraciously, studied and learned as she had always done in her single life. Sometimes, in quiet evenings, she played the piano, melancholy tunes that made Agatha sigh. Thomas began visiting her with troubling frequency, always with offers of help, always with suggestions for investments, always watching her with those calculating eyes. "You need protection, cousin. A young widow with such fortune. There are men who wouldn't have the best of intentions. And would you?" The question always hung in the air, never answered directly. Agatha disliked him. "Be careful with Thomas, dear. He looks at you as one looks at property for sale. I know that kind of greed." Charlotte knew her aunt was right, but Thomas was family, and it was easier to tolerate him in small doses than to create open conflict. Life continued, monotonous and safe. Charlotte had learned not to expect more. She had buried her dreams along with her child and her husband, until that spring morning in 1757. She was having tea in the drawing room when Agatha entered with the newspaper, an odd expression on her face. "Charlotte, dear, there's something here you need to see." Charlotte's hands trembled slightly as she took the London Chronicle. Her eyes skimmed the pages until they stopped at a section about new rising businessmen in the capital. Benjamin Harcourt, newly arrived from America, causes a sensation in London society. The young entrepreneur, who left 6 years ago under modest circumstances, returns as owner of an industrial empire of foundries and manufactories in the colonies. Sources close estimate his fortune in figures rivaling some of the most established nobles. Unmarried and of refined manners, Mr. Harcourt is already considered one of the most sought-after bachelors of the season, with mothers eager to present their daughters at every event he attends. Charlotte read it once, then again, and again, the words refusing to fully make sense. Benjamin. Benjamin had returned, no longer the dreamer her father had scorned, but a successful man, rich, powerful, and unmarried. Did she read that right? Unmarried? But hadn't he wed an American? "Charlotte? Are you all right? You've gone pale." She lifted her eyes to Agatha, unable to form words. "It's him, isn't it?" her aunt said softly. "The man you loved before Edward." Charlotte neither confirmed nor denied. She simply folded the newspaper with hands that would not stop trembling. "He's here. In London. Yes, I should." She stopped, not knowing how to finish the sentence. Should what? Seek him out? Ignore him? Pretend her heart wasn't pounding just from reading his name in print? Damn it. That man had said he loved her one night and days later left without looking back. Agatha sat beside her, holding her hand. "What do you want to do, dear?" Charlotte looked out the window at the bustling London streets. Somewhere out there, Benjamin Harcourt was rebuilding a life that could have been theirs. "I don't know," she whispered. "God, Aunt Agatha, I don't know. None of it matters. Some things must stay in the past, buried." That was what Charlotte wanted to believe. But that night, when she was alone in her room, she found herself opening the wardrobe, running her fingers over dresses she hadn't worn in months. Considering colors beyond black and gray, there was an important ball the following week. All of London society would be there. And if Benjamin Harcourt was the most coveted bachelor of the season, he would certainly be there too. Charlotte took out a silk gown of emerald blue, the color of his eyes. She realized with a painful ache and laid it across the bed. She didn't know what she would say if she saw him. She didn't know if he still thought of her, if he still hated her for the explanation she never gave. Damn it, he had left, hadn't even tried. But 6 years of silence had been far too long, and Charlotte Ashford, widow, mistress of her own fortune, decided she deserved at least an answer, even if it was only to finally close that chapter of her life. Charlotte hadn't planned on arriving so early at the Pemberton ball, but Agatha had insisted, saying it was better to be there before the crowd formed, before she lost her courage. Now, standing at the entrance of the magnificently lit ballroom, Charlotte wondered if courage wasn't precisely the problem. Perhaps she needed less courage and more sense. The emerald blue gown she had chosen now seemed far too bold a declaration. It wasn't black nor gray. It was life, it was color, it was everything mourning hadn't allowed. But technically, 3 years were enough. No one could criticize, except herself. "You look radiant, dear," Agatha murmured at her side. "Stop looking like a startled deer ready to bolt." "I'm not." "You are." And half the room has already noticed it was true. Charlotte felt the stares, the discreet whispers. The widow Ashford, finally emerging from full mourning. Finally available. The idea made her want to be sick. Then she saw him. Across the room, surrounded by a group of gentlemen clearly hanging on his every word, stood Benjamin Harcourt, and he was no longer the boy she had once known. 6 years had transformed the dreamer into something entirely different. Taller, or perhaps it was just the way he carried himself, broad shoulders filling out the dark coat with natural authority, posture erect like a man who had conquered the world and knew it. His dark brown hair was neatly brushed back with studied elegance, and a well-kept beard defined his jaw in a way that made something tighten in Charlotte's stomach. But it was the eyes that held her. Even from a distance, she could see the intensity in that green she knew so well. There was something new there, something hard, sharp, dangerous. As if he felt the weight of her gaze, Benjamin turned his head. Their eyes met across the sea of people. The entire world seemed to pause. Charlotte saw the exact moment he recognized her, saw the way his whole body tensed, how the champagne glass froze midway to his lips, how something crossed those green eyes, surprise, anger, and something else she couldn't name, but that made her heart race. He looked her up and down, a slow, deliberate appraisal that should have been insulting, but instead burned like fire through the silk gown. Then he excused himself from his companions and began to cross the room. Each step seemed to last an eternity. Charlotte couldn't move, couldn't look away, couldn't breathe properly. When Benjamin finally stopped before her, he kept a respectful distance, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made the air between them vibrate. "Lady Ashford." The voice was carefully neutral, but Charlotte caught the tension beneath it. As if he were forcing himself to maintain control, she made a small curtsy, buying time to steady her own voice. "Mr. Harcourt, it is a surprise to see you in London." "I imagine it is." Tense silence. Charlotte could feel Agatha watching closely, as well as half a dozen others curious about the interaction between the widow Ashford and the new American magnate. Benjamin cleared his throat. "I heard you were widowed. My condolences." The words were proper, but they sounded hollow, as if he were reading from a script. "Thank you. It was 3 years ago." "Yes, I read in the obituary. Lord Edward Ashford, respectable baron. Pneumonia, if I recall." There was something sharp in the way he said respectable baron that made Charlotte stiffen. "Yes, it was a sudden loss." "I'm sure it was." Another silence. The music continued in the background, couples dancing, London's social life spinning around them while they remained trapped in that suspended moment. Benjamin glanced around, then back at her. "You look different." 6 years will do that to people. They will. He studied her for what felt like an eternity. Charlotte felt the weight of that gaze, the way it lingered over her face as if cataloging every change. "Would you dance with me?" The question caught her off guard. I'm not sure it would be appropriate. We're old friends, aren't we?" he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Or has friendship died as well?" The barb was subtle but precise. Charlotte drew a steady breath. "One dance, then." He offered his arm with excessive formality. Charlotte accepted, and the first touch was like fire through the fabric of her glove. She saw by the tightening of his jaw that he felt it too. The country dance brought them near, but not too near, spinning among other couples, hands meeting at precise moments of the choreography. "I hear you prospered considerably in America," Charlotte said as the steps drew them close. "And that you married." "Married?" "I never did, but I hear you prospered as well. Mistress of a considerable fortune according to rumors, but in endless mourning. Rumors exaggerate. They do. They parted, circled other partners, then returned to each other." 6 years, he said low for her ears only. "Feels like a lifetime." "It does. And yet here we are. Here we are." His hand touched hers again in the next step, fingers curving slightly before letting go. "Are you well?" he asked, and there was something genuine in the question that unsettled her. "Truly well?" Charlotte hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected real concern beneath the tense formality. "I'm surviving. And you?" "The same." The music flowed, the steps continued, but there was an undercurrent of the unspoken pulsing between them. "Benjamin." "No," he cut softly. "Not here. Not like this. And then where? How?" He glanced around, then at the terrace doors. "I need air, and I imagine you do too." It wasn't an invitation. It was almost a plea. Charlotte gave a small nod. When the music ended, Benjamin once again offered his arm and led her across the ballroom. Charlotte felt the eyes, the whispers beginning, but she didn't care. Not in that moment. The terrace was empty, the night air cold against her heated skin. London stretched below them, lights flickering in the darkness. Benjamin released her arm and walked to the balustrade, his hands gripping the stone tightly. "Why did you come?" he asked without looking at her. "To the ball. Did you know I'd be here? I read about your return in the paper, and decided to attend." "Yes, why?" Charlotte stepped closer, keeping a careful distance but standing beside him. "Because I needed to see if it was true. If you had really returned." He laughed, but without humor. "And now that you've seen? Am I different than you expected? More presentable now that I have a fortune to rival lords?" The bitterness in his voice made her turn to face him. "That's unfair." "Unfair?" He finally looked at her, fire blazing in those green eyes. "You want to talk about fairness, Charlotte? I didn't choose it." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Do you think I wanted it? That it was easy?" 3 weeks, he said, each word sharp. "You married 3 weeks after I left. Oh, that doesn't look like someone forced. That looks like someone who had already made her choice. You weren't there. You don't know what happened, Who? Your father. Your mother?" He stepped toward her, his voice dangerously low. "I offered to fight for you, Charlotte. I offered everything I had. You left. Because you told me to go. I never said that. Your letter..." "What letter?" Charlotte nearly shouted, then lowered her voice, glancing nervously at the terrace doors. "I never wrote to you, Benjamin. I was waiting for you to come, to fight, to do something, but you simply vanished." He went very still, his jaw tightening. "Fight?" His voice came low, dangerous. "I went to your house, Charlotte. The morning after that night, I went to ask your father for your hand." Charlotte blinked, the world tilting. "You, what?" "He told me you were already engaged. That you had gladly accepted Lord Edward. That I had come too late. No, that isn't. And when I tried to insist when I said I loved you, that I had the means to care for you, he dismissed me. Said I was an unfit dreamer, and that you had made a woman's choice." Charlotte felt her knees weaken. I didn't know you had gone there. "So I wrote," he continued, his voice heavy with restrained bitterness. "A letter asking you to meet me. 2 days later at dawn under our oak. I had 2 horses, provisions, passage to America, an escape plan. I never received that letter. I waited, Charlotte, the entire night, until the sun rose, waiting for you to appear, to trust me enough to risk it." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "But you never came. And days later I received that note from you, saying the marriage would proceed, that you had chosen life with Lord Edward, wishing me well in America." Charlotte felt tears burn. "I never wrote that. Benjamin, I swear I never..." He looked at her with something between hope and doubt. "You never what?" "Never wrote asking you to leave. Never knew about the letter, about the escape plan, about any of it. If I had known you were waiting..." "You what, Charlotte?" He stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "Would you have come? Would you really have run away with me?" The question hung between them. Charlotte opened her mouth, then closed it. Memories flooded. Thomas threatening to ruin Benjamin. Her father speaking of financial ruin. Her mother insisting it was her duty to save the family. The veiled threats that any scandal would destroy them all. If she had known of the plan, if she had received that letter, would she have chosen Benjamin over her family's security? Over protecting him from Thomas's threats? Over saving her parents from misery? She wanted to say yes. God, how she wanted to say yes. But the words would not come. The silence stretched, each second adding more weight between them. Benjamin read the hesitation in her eyes, saw the answer she could not give. Something in him closed. The vulnerability that had begun to surface retreated behind walls of steel. "I understand," he said quietly, stepping back. "No, Benjamin, it isn't that simple. There were circumstances, there were threats, pressures? He finished, but there was no kindness in his voice. I'm sure there were. But in the end, Charlotte, when you weigh it all, you didn't choose me. Even if you had known of the escape plan, even with a way out, you wouldn't have come. You don't understand what was at stake. I understand perfectly, he said, and there was a new coldness in his eyes that made her shiver. I risked everything. You risked nothing. That's unfair. I had my family to protect. You had choices. Difficult, terrible, impossible perhaps. But they were choices. And you made yours. Charlotte felt the tears falling freely now, unable to stop them. And what did you expect me to do? Leave my family in ruin? Let Thomas destroy you with false accusations? You weren't there, you didn't see, you don't know how much— You're right, he interrupted, his voice suddenly tired. I wasn't there. And maybe that's the point. You handled everything alone because you decided that's what needed to be done, without giving me the chance to help, to fight by your side. I was protecting you. I didn't ask to be protected. For the first time, his voice rose, 6 years of frustration spilling over. I asked to be with you, to face whatever came, together, but you decided for both of us, Charlotte. Decided I wasn't strong enough or rich enough or important enough to be worth the risk. That's not true, isn't it? He met her eyes directly. Then tell me now, that morning, if you had received my letter, if you knew I was waiting, would you have come? Charlotte opened her mouth, closed it, felt the weight of 6 years of choices and consequences crush her. I don't know, she finally whispered. God forgive me, Benjamin, but I don't know. He nodded slowly, as if that were exactly what he had expected to hear. At least you're honest now. He turned to leave. Benjamin, wait, please. He stopped but didn't look at her. Someone manipulated us, Charlotte said desperately. The letters were forged, we were deceived. Doesn't that mean anything? It means everything, he answered quietly. It means we lost 6 years because of lies. But it also reveals truth, Charlotte. If you wouldn't have come even knowing the plan, then perhaps the liars only sped up the inevitable. Don't say that. He finally looked at her over his shoulder, and there was so much pain in those green eyes that Charlotte felt her heart shatter. Good evening, Lady Ashford. I hope your life was worth the choices you made. And he left, leaving Charlotte alone on the terrace, tears now flowing freely, the weight of everything that might have been crushing her chest. She had no clear answer to his question, and perhaps that said everything that needed to be said. She remained there for a few minutes, trying to steady her breathing back to normal. She decided she would not stay any longer. She needed to leave. Agatha caught up with her near the terrace doors. Charlotte. No, please don't say anything, Aunt. You still love him. It wasn't a question. Charlotte looked through the glass door, where Benjamin now stood in the middle of the ballroom, watching her leave with an expression she couldn't decipher. It doesn't matter what I feel. There's too much hurt, too much pain, and he clearly hates me. My dear, that wasn't hatred. Then what was it? Agatha smiled sadly. Everything hatred tries to hide when love refuses to die. That night, alone in his Mayfair residence, Benjamin emptied the trunk he had brought from America. At the bottom, wrapped in protective cloth, was the letter. The one Charlotte had written when she was 14, after a silly quarrel about which horse was faster. I will never let you be lost, Benjamin. Wherever you go, I will find you. I promise. See? He held the yellowed paper, the folds worn from being read so many times on lonely nights in Boston. He should burn it. He should let it go. Instead, he carefully smoothed the folds and slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat, right next to the heart that refused to forget what it felt like to love her. London, Charlotte soon discovered in the weeks after the ball, was cruelly small. Too small for two people who ought to avoid each other. Too small for hearts that insisted on recognizing one another across crowded ballrooms. Too small to pretend they didn't feel the air shift when they were in the same space. The first time was at the Marlborough Gallery. Charlotte stood before an immense canvas, a maritime storm, furious waves crashing against unyielding rocks. There was something in the restrained violence of the painting that resonated with the chaos inside her since that night on the terrace. Tempestuous, fitting, the voice behind her sent every nerve in her body alive. Charlotte didn't need to turn to know who it was. I thought you preferred landscapes more. "Zareen," she said, keeping her eyes fixed on the painting, unable to look at him yet. "I used to. America taught me to appreciate chaos." He moved to stand beside her. Too close to be casual, too far to be improper. Charlotte could feel his warmth through the space that separated them. "And what else did America teach you?" She finally looked at him. Mistake. His green eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. That some things can't be forgotten, no matter how hard you try. The silence that followed was so charged, Charlotte found it hard to breathe. She opened her mouth to reply, but he was already moving away, disappearing among the other gallery visitors, leaving her trembling, and furious at herself for trembling. The second time was at the theater. Charlotte hadn't known he would be there. Or at least that's what she told herself when she chose the dark green gown Agatha insisted brought out her eyes. The boxes were too close. Far too close. Through the entire first half of the play, something about vengeance and inevitable fate, Charlotte could feel the weight of his gaze. Every time she dared to look, he was watching her instead of the stage. At intermission, she fled into the corridor, desperate for air. Of course, he was there too. "Are you enjoying the play?" Charlotte turned, finding him only a few steps away, hands in his pockets, posture casual, but eyes alert. Greek tragedies. Heroes destroyed by their own pride seems familiar. "Yes," he agreed, taking a step closer. "Pride is a dangerous thing. Or necessary," she retorted. "Some of us didn't have the luxury of choosing between pride and survival. We all have choices, Charlotte. We just live with the consequences." The sharpness in his tone made her stiffen. "You seem very certain in your opinions for someone who spent 6 years avoiding having to revisit them." His eyes glinted dangerously. "Careful. We're in public. Then perhaps you should keep your distance." Perhaps I should, but neither of them moved. They stood there, the corridor emptying around them. The bell announcing the return to the play ignored, the tension between them vibrating like a string about to snap. It was Lady Pemberton passing by that broke the moment, her curious, judging glance forcing Charlotte to step back. "Excuse me," she murmured, quickly returning to her box. But she spent the rest of the play unable to focus on anything except how her entire body still hummed from that brief nearness. The third time was accidental. Or at least Charlotte tried to convince herself it was. She had woken before dawn, restless, the sheets feeling like prisons. The obvious solution was to ride, an old rebellion she had never fully abandoned. Hyde Park was nearly empty at that hour, only a few early riders and a thin mist over the grass. Athena galloped eagerly, and Charlotte allowed herself to lose herself in the movement, in the wind on her face, in the illusion of freedom, until she saw another rider in the distance. Even before she made out the face, her body recognized him. The way he sat in the saddle, the line of his shoulders, something fundamentally familiar that made her pull on the reins. Benjamin saw her too. Hesitated visibly, then guided his horse toward her. When they stopped side by side beneath a young oak, not theirs, it would never be theirs, but close enough to ache, the horses recognized each other first. Ares snorted softly, dipping his head toward Athena. The mare answered with a low whinny, and Charlotte felt tears sting inexplicably. "You kept Ares, and you brought Athena. Some loyalties last longer than others, it seems." The barb was subtle, but it struck home. "And you would be an expert in loyalty," she shot back, her voice sharper than intended. Benjamin looked at her for a long moment, something indefinable passing through his eyes. "I would have been, if I'd had the chance to prove it." Before Charlotte could respond, he touched his heels to Ares's sides and rode off at a gallop, leaving her alone under the tree, her heart racing. The weeks dragged on in that cruel pattern, encounters that weren't encounters, conversations that were battlefields in disguise, glances across crowded ballrooms that said everything they couldn't speak, and London was talking. "I've heard Lady Ashford, the widowed baroness, and that American have a past," Lady Thornton murmured over tea. "She was only recently in mourning," replied another. "What indecency if it's true. 3 years is plenty of mourning for a young widow," considered a third. Although choosing an industrialist without a title, Charlotte heard the whispers and pretended not to care. But every word was a needle. Thomas intensified his visits, appearing at her house with a frequency that bordered on obsessive. And there was something different now, something more possessive in the way he watched her. That afternoon he arrived unannounced, finding her in the sitting room where she was reading. "Charlotte, dear cousin, what a pleasure to finally see you wearing colors again." He came too close, his eyes roaming the moss-green gown she wore in a way that made her want to cover herself with a shawl. "Green brings out your eyes beautifully. Edward would have approved of you coming back to life." The mention of her dead husband sounded false, calculated. "Thomas, you didn't say you were coming today." "Family doesn't need notice," he said, sitting beside her on the sofa when 3 other chairs were available. "Besides, I came with a purpose. I'd like to invite you for a ride tomorrow. Hyde Park, perhaps? The weather is pleasant and you need fresh air." He leaned closer, and Charlotte felt the space around her shrink dangerously. "Thomas." "Say yes, Charlotte. You've been secluded long enough." His hand moved as if to touch hers, and Charlotte rose abruptly, creating physical distance. "I appreciate the invitation, but I have commitments." His face hardened. For a brief moment, something cold flashed in his eyes before he composed his mask of politeness again. "Commitments. I see." He stood too, but there was tension in his movements now. "I suppose those commitments include avoiding certain undesirable elements who've recently returned to our society?" Charlotte went very still. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you?" He took a step toward her, invading her space again. "I hear Mr. Harcourt, that American industrialist, is causing quite a stir. In fact, I saw him yesterday at Vauxhall Gardens. He was extremely attentive with Lady Sarah Pennington. Very close, very interested. She's young, pretty, and her father has a title. Suitable, I'd say." Charlotte's stomach clenched painfully, but she kept her expression neutral. "Mr. Harcourt's choices are no concern of mine." "No? What a relief. Some malicious tongues have been hinting that the two of you have been trying to rekindle a past. It would be unfortunate if there were any truth to that, especially now that he's clearly pursuing a young, proper, unmarried wife." The barely disguised venom in his voice made her stiffen. "I think it's time for you to leave, Thomas." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Of course, cousin. But remember, we're family, and family looks after each other, protects each other from poor decisions." When he finally left, Charlotte allowed herself to sit again, her legs trembling. Lady Agatha entered moments later, having clearly waited for Thomas to go. "He's getting bolder," said the aunt, settling beside Charlotte. "I know. And you're getting more transparent." Charlotte looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "When he mentioned Benjamin with that girl, you went pale. Your hands gripped the book so hard your knuckles turned white." "I didn't." "My dear, you still love him. It's obvious to anyone with eyes. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Charlotte had no answer for that. Or she did, but it involved admitting things that still terrified her too. Much to say aloud. The 4th time she saw him, the one that would change everything, was at Hatchard's bookshop. Charlotte was searching for something new to read, something to distract her from the sleepless nights where all she could think of were green eyes and unanswered questions. Her fingers slid along the spine of a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets. Other fingers touched the same book from the opposite side. She knew those hands. She knew their shape, their contained strength, the way the fingers were long and elegant despite the small scars from years of labor. She looked up. Benjamin was on the other side of the shelf, so close she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the trimmed beard even at day's end, the way he drew a deep breath upon seeing her. Charlotte, her name spoken so intimately, came out as both plea and accusation. She should let go of the book. She should step away. She should do anything but stand there, hands inches from his, feeling the entire world reduced to that point of almost contact. "No," she whispered, eyes closed. "Don't say anything we can't take back." "And what if I don't want to take it back?" Charlotte opened her eyes, meeting his. There was so much raw emotion there, desire, pain, desperate hope, that her heart stumbled. She released the book and fled. She literally ran from the bookshop, ignoring the startled looks, ignoring Agatha calling her name, ignoring everything except the urgent need to put distance between herself and the man who still had the power to destroy her with a single glance. Benjamin stood for a long moment after she left, still holding the book they had both touched. Then with sudden resolve, he went to the counter and bought it. At home, he opened to the first page and stared at the blank paper for long minutes. What was he doing? Chasing after a woman who had admitted she might never have chosen him? Risking being rejected again by the same person who had already broken his heart once. But then he remembered the way she had looked at him in the bookshop. The tremor in her hands when they touched his. The way she had run, not with indifference but with fear of what she felt. Charlotte was afraid, and Benjamin was tired of being afraid too. 6 years building walls, proving his worth, making himself worthy. For what? To impress a society that would never fully accept him? To prove to her father, long dead, that he was enough? No, the brutal truth was that everything, every deal struck, every fortune amassed, every success won, had been for her. To prove that she should have chosen him. To prove the mistake had been hers. But perhaps the mistake had been his as well. For leaving, for believing too easily, for letting pride speak louder than the fight. Benjamin picked up his pen, the decision crystallizing in his mind. He could no longer bear seeing her without being able to touch her. Could no longer bear pretending he didn't want her with every fiber of his being. That he didn't wake every morning with her ghost beside him in bed, with the memory of what it had been to kiss her beneath the stars. He wanted her. God, how he wanted her. Not just physically, though that need burned constant and painfully. But he wanted her laughter, her sharp opinions, the way she saw the world. He wanted the comfortable silences that only exist between people who know each other deeply. He wanted to build something new on the ruins of what they had been. And if she didn't want him back? If even now, even knowing of the manipulation, she still couldn't choose him, then at least he would have tried. At least this time he would not run. He would fight. He wrote in careful script, "To the one I never should have left behind. B," then he added beneath it. Words he had been thinking for weeks but had been too afraid to write. "I will win your heart again, Charlotte. Even if it takes the rest of my life." He looked at the words, considered striking them out. They were too bold, too revealing. But no, enough cowardice. Enough pride shielding a heart that was already lost anyway. He wrapped the book and sent it to her residence, knowing she would recognize who had sent it, knowing it would either change everything or destroy what remained between them, and discovering he was willing to risk both, because a life without Charlotte, even a life full of success and fortune, was only existing. And Benjamin Harcourt was tired of merely existing. He wanted to live, and he wanted to live with her. The package arrived in the morning. Charlotte recognized it immediately. The wrapping paper from Hatchard's bookshop, the simple yet careful ribbon. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Shakespeare, the volume they had both touched. She opened to the first page and read, "To the one I never should have left behind, B." And beneath it, in letters that seemed written in urgency, "I will win your heart again, Charlotte. Even if it takes the rest of my life." The book slipped from her hands. She sat down abruptly, her heart pounding so fiercely she felt it in her pulse, her throat, her temples. He was going to fight for her. After everything, the bitterness, the accusations, the pain, Benjamin still wanted to try. The question was, did she have the courage to try as well? The answer came from an unexpected source. 2 days later, a young woman appeared at her door. Charlotte vaguely recognized her. Martha, a former maid of the Alden household dismissed years ago. She could not have been more than 25. "Lady Ashford, forgive the intrusion, but there is something you must know. Something that has kept me from sleeping for 6 years. Agatha, ever protective, tried to dismiss her, but Charlotte felt something, an intuition, an urgent need. Let her in." In the sitting room, Martha wrung her hands nervously. "6 years ago, your cousin, Mr. Thomas, asked me to deliver a letter to you. He said it was from young Mr. Harcourt, but later, much later, I discovered the letter had been written by Mr. Thomas himself, not Mr. Harcourt." Charlotte's blood turned to ice. "What? And there is more, milady. Servant from the Harcourt household, the young man I later married, told me. Mr. Thomas intercepted a correspondence meant for you. He threatened the poor boy with information about gambling debts. The lad had no choice but to hand over the envelope." Charlotte felt the world tilt. Thomas intercepted letters. Forged others. Yes, milady. And forgive me for not saying it sooner, but I was afraid. Mr. Thomas dismissed me when I grew suspicious. He made sure I could not find another position in any respectable house. I only came now because I can no longer bear the weight of it on my conscience. After Martha left, with generous coins and Charlotte's promise to help her, fury came. Pure, incandescent, devastating. That wretch, Charlotte whispered, then screamed. That wretched man! Agatha watched her with concern. Charlotte. He destroyed everything, Agatha. He separated us, lied, manipulated. 6 years. 6 years of my life wasted because he… The sobs came then, deep and racking. Years of hurt, of guilt, of believing she had been abandoned, all crumbling into tears. Agatha held her, letting her weep. We will do something about this, her aunt said firmly. But first we need proof. The proof came more easily than Charlotte expected. Thomas had left some belongings at her house. Documents, correspondence he claimed he needed to keep in a safe place. Charlotte had never questioned it, never looked. Now she went through everything, and she found the drafts. Her own words, copied and distorted in his hand, rehearsed until they looked convincingly like hers. The cruel sentences sent to Benjamin, written and rewritten until perfect. And worse, a letter never sent addressed to a friend of Thomas where he bragged about the scheme. He mentioned a third letter he would use if necessary, claiming Benjamin had married in America. Charlotte remembered with sudden, painful clarity. Thomas had mentioned that during tea years ago. She had been married to Edward then, trying to build some semblance of life, and Thomas had casually remarked, I heard your old friend Harcourt married in Boston. An heiress of good family, so they say. She had never questioned it. Why would she? Thomas was family, but it had all been lies. All of it. Charlotte didn't think twice. She donned a dark cloak, ignored Agatha's protests about the improper hour, and went. Benjamin's Mayfair residence was partially lit when she arrived. Midnight had just passed. It had begun to rain. Because of course it would rain. The universe always had a perfect sense of drama. She knocked hard. A servant answered, clearly surprised to see a lady wet and alone at such an hour. I must speak with Mr. Harcourt, now. Milady. It is very late, and now, she repeated, her voice cutting. Benjamin appeared at the top of the stairs wearing only shirt and trousers, his hair tousled as though he had been reading or struggling to sleep. When he saw her, soaked and trembling in the doorway, he rushed down the stairs. Charlotte, what? She thrust the bundle of papers at him, letters, drafts, everything. We need to talk. He pulled her inside, dismissed the servant, closed the study door behind them. Charlotte began to speak. It all poured out. Martha, the intercepted letters, the drafts, the complete and systematic manipulation by Thomas. She saw shock cross Benjamin's face, then disbelief, then a fury so absolute he had to step away, fists clenching. He did this, that… Benjamin drew a deep breath, fighting for control. 6 years, Charlotte. He stole 6 years from us. I know. He made me believe you despised me, that I was inadequate, childish, not enough. And he made me believe you had abandoned me without a backward glance. Benjamin turned to her, tears in his eyes now. Charlotte, if I had known, if I had suspected for even a moment… I know, she repeated, her voice breaking. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her with a strength that bordered on desperation. Charlotte felt the dam break again, sobs shaking her body. I loved you so much, she wept against his chest. And when I thought you had married, that you had moved on, I wanted to die, Benjamin. I know it wasn't fair, after all I was married, even if trapped in a loveless marriage forced upon me. Charlotte. And the baby. Her voice broke now. Edward's baby was born and died soon after. Benjamin, and all I could think was that God was punishing me for wishing, every single day, that he were yours instead of his. Benjamin grew very quiet, then pulled her back just enough to look into her eyes. You lost a child. The pain in his voice shattered her all over again. A boy, dark hair. He lived only 3 hours. Charlotte. His voice cracked. I didn't know. God, I'm so sorry. He held her again, and this time they wept together. For everything stolen from them. For all the needless pain. For 6 years of loneliness when they could have been together. When they finally pulled apart, Benjamin lit the fire, wrapped her in blankets, and sat down beside her. "How do we fix this?" Charlotte asked. "How do we come back from so much poison?" Benjamin cupped her face in both hands. "I don't know if we can go back. But we can start again. Learn who we are now, not who we were." "And Thomas?" His eyes hardened. "Thomas will answer for everything he's done." "Did you get the book I sent you? Did you read what I wrote?" She nodded, another wave of emotion rushing through her. "I did, thank you. I admit I was moved." "Then you know," he said softly, "that I had already decided to fight for you, and I won't give up. Not this time. We will fight, Charlotte. Together." "Together," she repeated, and for the first time in 6 years the word felt possible. The next morning, Thomas Winters received a sealed note. "Your presence is requested at the residence of Lady Ashford. Today at noon. Charlotte, Alden, and Benjamin Harcourt." His hands trembled as he read. They knew, but Thomas was not a man to surrender easily. He still had a trump card, forged deeds showing that Charlotte's properties were mortgaged to him. If she exposed him publicly, he would ruin her. He smiled coldly. Let them come. He was ready. Thomas arrived precisely at noon, impeccably dressed, carrying a leather case that he held as though it were his shield. Charlotte and Benjamin were waiting in the drawing room. She sat with rigid posture. He stood at her side, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. Thomas looked at his hand and smiled. "What a touching scene. So you've uncovered my little stratagem. I must admit, I'm impressed. I thought it would take longer." Benjamin stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You destroyed years of our lives. Manipulated, lied, stole 6 years from us. I protected my family," Thomas corrected calmly, sitting down without being invited. "From a disastrous marriage to a nobody without a title." Charlotte rose, trembling with fury. "You condemned me to a loveless marriage. Because of you, I lost happiness and the baby, yes, tragic." The way he said it, casual with no empathy, made Benjamin clench his fists. "But such things happen," Thomas went on. "And now, dear cousin, you are trapped again." He opened the case and threw documents onto the table. "Debt deeds. Signed by you 2 years ago. Your estate is mortgaged to me. Every stone, every garden, including the one where you buried the child." Charlotte picked up the papers with trembling hands. The signatures looked like hers. The dates were there. Witnesses she didn't recall. I don't remember signing this." "You were in deep mourning, Charlotte. Trauma. It's understandable you don't remember. But the documents are legal." Benjamin snatched the papers from her hands, studying them. "These are forgeries." "Prove it," Thomas smiled. "But while you investigate, while you hire your expensive lawyers, while you try to discredit documents that look perfectly legitimate, I can execute the debt. Tomorrow if I wish. You can't, I can. Unless Charlotte is reasonable." Charlotte felt her blood run cold. "Reasonable how?" "Marry me. Keep the fortune in the family. The debts vanish. You live comfortably as my wife." Benjamin exploded. "You're completely insane." "I'm being practical. Charlotte, you choose. Marriage to me in 3 days or lose everything. Your house, your lands, your reputation." Charlotte looked at Benjamin, desperate. The deeds looked real, even if they were false, proving it would take time. Time Thomas would not allow. "Don't believe him," Benjamin said, but there was tension in his voice. He saw the trap too. Thomas stood picking up his case. 3 days. Think carefully. He paused at the door. "Oh, and Charlotte, perhaps you'd like to know that some very interesting rumors have begun to circulate. About you and Benjamin. About that baby who died. People do arithmetic so quickly when encouraged." He left, leaving the poison behind. The rumors spread like wildfire. 2 days later, Charlotte went to a society tea. She had to keep up appearances, had to show she wasn't afraid. But the women turned their backs. Literally. Lady Pemberton approached, her face a mask of disapproval. "How dare you show your face here? I am innocent of the accusations." "Innocent? Your own cousin, a respectable gentleman, confirmed that you and that American were lovers. That poor Lord Edward died of grief upon discovering it. That is slander." "Then why would your cousin lie?" Another lady interjected. "He only wishes to protect the family name from the shame you've brought." Charlotte looked around. Faces once friendly were now cold, judgmental. Do not be foolish. I became pregnant 6 months after my marriage. Benjamin was in America. Thomas wants to spread lies and seize my fortune, she said, her voice firm despite her inner despair. He is willing to destroy my life to have it, but no one believed her. Thomas had built his reputation carefully over years. A concerned cousin, a family man. Charlotte left before they could see her cry. Benjamin tried to defend her publicly, but every attempt only made things worse. Now they looked like desperate lovers trying to cover a scandal. That night, Charlotte returned home shattered. Benjamin was waiting in the drawing room, admitted by Agatha. "It's over," Charlotte said, her voice hollow. "Even if we prove the deeds are false, they've already condemned me." "Their opinion doesn't matter. It matters," she exploded. "If I'm a social outcast, no one will do business with me. No one will respect my property. Thomas wins either way." Benjamin gripped her shoulders. "Then we'll leave. America, Scotland, wherever you want. We'll start again, far from all of this. You don't need anything here, Charlotte. You can have the life of a queen by my side, anywhere you choose. And let Thomas win?" Tears were spilling now. "Let him have everything my son should have inherited? The garden where I buried him?" She broke down. Benjamin pulled her into his arms, holding her as sobs shook her body. "I won't lose you a second time," he whispered into her hair. "Even if I have to buy every witness, every lord, we'll find a way." "There is no way." "There is," the voice came from the doorway. Lady Agatha stood there, and beside her was a woman of about 60, erect posture, eyes of steel that Charlotte recognized. Lady Eleanor Winters, Thomas's mother. Charlotte pulled away from Benjamin, hastily wiping her tears. "Lady Eleanor, my son," the woman said, her voice firm and cold, "is a liar and a thief, and I've come to help you expose him." The silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor entered the room, placing her own case on the table. "I'm tired, Lady Ashford. Tired of his manipulations, his lies, his cruelty. When Agatha told me what he did to you and to young Harcourt," she shook her head, "I can no longer remain silent." "Why would you help us?" Benjamin asked, wary. "Because 6 years ago, when my husband was dying, Charlotte was the only one who visited him, who read to him, who sat at his side when not even his own son came." Eleanor looked directly at Charlotte. "And because a mother knows when she has raised a monster, and has the duty to stop him." She opened the case, revealing documents, the true deeds of your property, without any mortgage, and drafts of the forgeries I found in Thomas's office. He was always careless, keeping his schemes as trophies. Charlotte took the papers with trembling hands. They were identical to the ones Thomas had presented, but without the false debts. "This is proof," Eleanor said simply. "And I have more. Letters, receipts of bribes, everything. Enough to ruin him completely and publicly." Benjamin looked at Charlotte. For the first time in days, there was hope in his eyes. "We can expose him," he said, "in front of all society." Eleanor nodded. "The Ashworth's ball is in 2 days. All of London will be there, including Thomas. It will be the perfect stage." Charlotte took a deep breath. After so much pain, so much manipulation, she finally had the weapons to fight back. "Then we'll fight," she said, her voice gaining strength. "And this time Thomas Winters will pay for everything he's done." The Ashworth's ball was at its height when Lady Agatha called for attention. The music stopped. Conversation ceased. All eyes turned to the hostess, who stood beside Lady Eleanor Winters, Charlotte, and Benjamin. Thomas, who had arrived minutes earlier brimming with confidence, suddenly looked uneasy. "I hope this farce ends quickly," he said loudly enough to be heard. "I have business to attend to." "Oh, it will end," Agatha replied with a sharp smile. "But not the way you think." Eleanor rose, and there was something relentless in her stance that silenced the entire hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, my son is a criminal." Shock rippled through the crowd like a wave. Thomas went pale. "Mother, what are you?" "He forged letters," Eleanor continued, her voice steady and clear. "Falsified deeds, and more gravely, destroyed lives out of sheer greed. I have the proof here." She opened the case she had brought, beginning to display documents that Agatha handed out to those gathered. The original letters he intercepted 6 years ago. the drafts of his forgeries written in his own practiced hand, the true deeds of Lady Ashford's estate free of any debt, and signed testimonies from servants he bribed. Thomas tried to laugh, but it sounded forced. This is the vengeance of a bitter woman against her own son. She never forgave me for what? Charlotte rose, her voice cutting. For stealing 6 years of my life? For condemning me to a loveless marriage? For your role in the death of my child? Murmurs swept across the hall. I have no proof that you knew. I do, Benjamin interrupted, stepping forward and throwing more documents onto the table. I paid investigators to trace your every move. You hired forgers 3 times in the past 6 years. 2 of them are ready to testify in court. Thomas's face was red now, sweat breaking across his forehead. Charlotte, we're family. You can't do this to me. Charlotte walked up to him, ice in her eyes. You destroyed me first, and it wasn't family love I felt when you stole my future. It was greed. Thomas turned to Benjamin, desperate, venomous. And you? Do you think you'll get your happy ending? Society will never accept you. She'll always be the widow who supposedly betrayed her dead husband. I don't care what they think, Benjamin said with deadly calm. The only one who matters to me is her, Thomas snapped, losing all composure. She was never yours. Never anyone's. She is merchandise, a title, a fortune. And you're too much of a lovesick fool to see it. The silence that followed was absolute. Charlotte stepped closer, her blue-green eyes cold as steel. And you are such an empty man that you only see value in coins and properties. You could have had my respect, Thomas. Now you only have my contempt. Lady Pemberton, the same who had humiliated Charlotte at the tea, stood. Mr. Winters, consider yourself banished from any respectable event in this city. Your mother has our sympathy. You have our disgust. One by one, the guests turned their backs on Thomas. Complete humiliation. He looked around, at the mother who had exposed him, at Charlotte who despised him, at Benjamin who stood unmoving, at the society that now rejected him. Without a word, Thomas left the hall, shoulders bowed, socially and financially ruined. Eleanor approached Charlotte, tears in her eyes. Forgive me. I should have seen it sooner. Charlotte took the older woman's hands. You saved me when it mattered. That is what counts. Later, when the guests began to leave and the garden stood empty under the moonlight, Charlotte and Benjamin were finally alone. It's done, she said, breaking the silence. Thomas can no longer hurt us. And now? Charlotte looked at him, at the man who had fought by her side, who had risked everything. Now, she drew a deep breath. Now we can finally live. Benjamin stepped closer, his eyes shining with cautious hope. Are you sure? I am, she said. And for the first time in years, she felt lightness in saying it. I know we spent 6 years believing lies. I know there are scars. But I also know I love you, Benjamin. I always have. And I don't want to waste another single day. He smiled. The smile she had known since childhood, but now with something new. Maturity. Hope. A future. But I need to know, Charlotte continued, her voice dropping, if you truly forgive me. For the hurt I caused, even unknowingly. For not fighting harder, for not being stronger. Benjamin cupped her face in both hands. Charlotte, I already forgave you. The moment I learned the truth, everything changed. There's nothing to forgive because you were as much a victim as I was. But the lost years. We've already lost too much time, he interrupted gently. I won't waste another second on regrets. I only want to move forward. With you. He reached inside his coat pocket and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. The old note from when they were children. You promised, he said, his eyes never leaving hers, that you would find me if I were ever lost. Charlotte took the note, reading the words she had written so long ago. A child's promise that had become prophecy. Then find me now, he whispered. Truly find me, forever. Charlotte needed no more words. She pulled him to her and kissed him. Not with despair, not with fear, but with certainty. With promise. With future. When they parted, both were smiling, tears of joy instead of pain. So this is it? She asked. We begin again? No, Benjamin said, intertwining his fingers with hers. We don't begin again. We continue from where we left off, beneath that oak tree on that summer night. It just took a little longer to arrive here. Charlotte laughed, the sound free and genuine. A little? 6 years, Benjamin. Even so, it was worth the wait. She rested her forehead against his. It was. 2 weeks dragged by. Charlotte lived in a haze, managing estates, smiling at Agatha, pretending she was fine. Then the package arrived. Inside, an old wrought iron key and a hand-drawn map. On the back, the handwriting she knew so well. Beneath our oak. When you are ready, I'll be waiting. Charlotte looked at the key, the map, the promise contained in those few words. And for the first time in weeks, she felt something beyond fear. She felt hope. Charlotte departed in the morning, accompanied by Lady Agatha. Her aunt had insisted on traveling with her. A lady did not travel alone, especially not on a journey of several hours to Somerset. Charlotte had accepted with gratitude. Agatha had always known when to press and when simply to be present. The carriage journey took the entire day. Every mile that brought them closer to Somerset carried memories Charlotte thought she had buried. Every familiar turn of the road, every village they passed through, every landmark, all conspired to make her feel as though she was traveling not only through space, but through time as well. "Are you nervous?" Agatha asked at one point, watching Charlotte gaze out the window with a distant expression. "Terrified," Charlotte admitted with a small smile, "and at the same time more certain than I've ever been of anything. That, my dear, is exactly how you should feel." When the Alden estate appeared in the distance, Charlotte's heart pounded painfully. It was the first time she had returned since her marriage. Her parents had moved to Hampshire soon after she wed Edward, preferring to leave the Somerset estate under the care of servants alone. The house seemed smaller than in her memories, or perhaps she had grown too much to fit in those rooms she once knew so well. The servants received them with surprise and joy. The old housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, who still worked there, wept at the sight of Charlotte. "Lady Ashford, we had no idea you were coming. It was a sudden decision," Charlotte said, embracing the woman. "I needed to return, to revisit some things." Agatha gave her a knowing look but said nothing. After they settled in and refreshed themselves, Charlotte stood at the window of her old room, looking out toward the neighboring estate. The Harcourt house stood silent in the distance. Benjamin's father had also moved to another property, leaving only stewards. 2 empty houses, 2 ghosts of families who once filled those spaces with life. But soon, very soon, she would bring life back to that place. "He's waiting." "You know," Agatha said softly from the doorway. Charlotte turned, Benjamin's map still in her hands. "I know. Then go. Before it grows too late, go to him." Charlotte smiled, feeling tears of anticipation and joy. "I will." The afternoon arrived wrapped in soft mist. Charlotte carefully put on the white lace dress, left her hair loose in waves, and picked up the map. Agatha was waiting in the entrance hall. "Do you want company on the way?" "No," Charlotte said gently. "This moment needs to be just ours." Agatha nodded, then pulled her into a quick hug. "Then go claim your happy ending, dear. You've waited long enough." Charlotte left through the back door, following the path she knew by heart but hadn't walked in years, through gardens that had once been perfectly tended and were now a little wild, through the small grove that separated the estates, through the field where she and Benjamin used to run as children. Charlotte dismounted, tying Athena near a brook. She opened the map Benjamin had sent, hand-drawn with meticulous care, showing the way through the fields to the ancient oak that marked the border between the estates. Their oak. She followed the path, the tall grass brushing against her light dress, the one she knew he liked. And then she saw him. The oak rose majestic against the evening sky, its branches spread like arms open in welcome. And under those branches, leaning against the trunk in a posture that was half patience and half tension, stood Benjamin. He saw her at the same time, straightened, his hands leaving his pockets, his entire body alert. Charlotte stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy, as if they were strangers instead of souls who had known each other a lifetime. "You came," he said, and there was so much emotion in those 2 words that Charlotte felt tears sting. "I promised, didn't I? That I would find you if you were lost, and I was. Completely lost without you." They looked at each other across the space that separated them, only a few feet physically, but an abyss of years and pain finally being crossed. Charlotte took the first step, then another, then she was running. Benjamin met her halfway, lifting her in his arms and spinning her, both of them laughing and crying at once. When he set her back down, he cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "I thought this day would never come. I thought I had lost you forever." "Never," Charlotte said firmly. "I could never lose you. Even when I thought I had, some part of me always knew. Always knew you were mine." "As you were mine," he agreed. "Since the first time I saw you trying to climb this tree at 8 years old and falling flat in the mud." Charlotte laughed through her tears. "You laughed at me. Then I helped you climb. And you stayed up there for hours, refusing to come down because your mother was going to scold you for ruining your dress. And you stayed below talking to me until the sun went down. I would always stay," he said softly. "In any circumstance. Forever." Charlotte looked at him, at the man who had been the boy of her childhood, her best friend, her first love, her greatest loss, and now, finally, her future. "Benjamin Harcourt," she said, her voice steady despite the tears. "I love you. I loved you yesterday. I love you today, and I will love you all the days left to me." He smiled, that smile that lit his entire face. "Charlotte Alden," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I did this all wrong 7 years ago, so let me do it right now." And then, to her total surprise, he went down on one knee. From his coat pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a ring simple yet beautiful, an emerald surrounded by small diamonds that gleamed in the golden light of dusk. "Here," he said, his voice trembling now. "Under this oak where I first told you I loved you, where I kissed you and knew I would never love another, where I lost you and spent 6 years trying in vain to forget. Charlotte, would you do me the honor of marrying me?" Charlotte covered her mouth with her hands, sobs and laughter mingling. "Yes, God, yes. 1,000 times yes, my love." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit as if it had been made to be there, and then rose, pulling her into a kiss that was unlike all the others. There was no desperate urgency like that night almost 7 years ago, no bitterness and pain like in their recent arguments. This kiss was pure promise. It was future. It was home. When they parted, both breathless, Benjamin pressed his forehead to hers. When what? When will you marry me?" "Because I swear, Charlotte, I can't wait much longer." She laughed, the sound free and joyful. "Next week if it were up to me." "Next week?" His eyes widened. "You mean it?" "Completely. We've wasted too much time already. Why wait any longer?" Benjamin lifted her into his arms again, spinning her. "You are perfect. Absolutely perfect." They sat beneath the oak, leaning against the trunk, Charlotte nestled against his chest, her head on his shoulder. Night began to fall, painting the sky pink and gold. "Tell me," she said softly, "everything you did in those 6 years. I don't want any more gaps between us." And so he told her. About America, about building his empire from nothing, about lonely nights when all he could think of was her, about almost returning 1,000 times but pride always holding him back. Charlotte, in turn, spoke about the loveless marriage with Edward, about the pregnancy and the devastation of losing the baby, about the empty years of widowhood where she existed but did not live. Because she was free and he was far away and she believed he was married. "Never again," Benjamin said fiercely. "Never again will you merely exist. I will make you feel alive every day." Charlotte turned to look at him, and there was something new in her eyes now. Desire, need, the fire that had always existed between them but that they had been forced to repress. "Benjamin," she whispered, and the way she said his name made his blood burn. "Charlotte, we shouldn't. We're out in the open field and—" "Kiss me," she cut him off. "Kiss me as if we were marrying tomorrow and not a week from now." He needed no more encouragement. This kiss was different, deeper, more urgent, hands exploring, bodies pressing closer. Years of repressed desire finally finding release. Benjamin gently laid her down on the soft grass beneath the oak, covering her with his body, but holding his weight on his arms. He kissed her neck, the curve of her jaw, the sensitive spot behind her ear that made her moan softly. "You're killing me," he murmured against her skin. "Good, because you're undoing me in a completely different way." Her hands found his hair, pulling him back into another hungry kiss. They lost themselves in each other, in sensation, in the promise of all that was to come. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, the sky was dark, and the stars had begun to appear. "1 week," Benjamin said, his voice hoarse. "I don't think I'll survive," Charlotte laughed, touching his face tenderly. "You will. We both will. Because after everything we've been through, we deserve to do this right. With family, with friends, with celebration." "You're right," he agreed, kissing the palm of her hand. "But that doesn't mean it will be easy to wait." They stayed there until late, talking about the future, making plans, sharing dreams that once seemed impossible. About having children who would grow up running through those same fields. About dividing their time between London and Somerset. About growing old together, exactly as it always should have been. When they finally stood to leave, Benjamin insisting on escorting her back home, Charlotte looked back one last time at the oak. "It saw everything," she said softly. "Our first kiss, our separation, and now our new beginning." "It's not a new beginning," Benjamin corrected, pulling her closer. "It's a continuation. The story that was always ours, it just took a longer road to arrive here." Charlotte smiled, resting her head on his shoulder as they walked. "Then let's write the rest together. Forever," he promised. "Forever," she echoed. And under the Somerset stars, two hearts finally found their way back to one another. Spring of 1758, 1 year later. The Somerset estate was unrecognizable. Where once there had been neglected gardens, now roses and lavender bloomed in profusion. The stables, once silent, echoed with the neighs of well-kept horses. And every afternoon, the laughter of village children filled the air, as Charlotte taught them to read in the library she had transformed into a classroom. It was her project, her passion, to give the girls of the region something she herself had always valued: education, possibilities, choices. On that particular afternoon, Charlotte was on the veranda, her hands resting on her 6-month rounded belly. She watched Benjamin riding back from the fields, and her heart still raced at the sight of him, as if they were those 17 and 19-year-olds discovering love for the first time. He dismounted with fluid grace, took something from the saddlebag and climbed the veranda steps with that smile she knew so well. Wildflowers. He always brought wildflowers. "How is my family?" he asked, kissing her softly before kneeling and kissing her belly as well. Charlotte laughed, her fingers threading through his hair. "Your family is hungry and sleepy," and got strangely emotional because a butterfly landed on the rose bush earlier. Benjamin stood laughing. "Thank God I love you anyway." "Anyway?" The tone of mock indignation made him laugh harder, especially that way. "I love you pregnant, emotional, hungry, and in every other possible way." They sat together on the veranda bench. Charlotte nestled against him. Benjamin placed his hand on her belly, and as if in response, the baby kicked. "Strong," he murmured, amazed. "Like the mother." "Stubborn," Charlotte corrected. "Like the father." They remained in comfortable silence, watching the sun begin to dip over the fields. It was in these moments Charlotte felt the deepest peace. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of a love so solid that it made any challenge bearable. The sound of hooves interrupted the moment. A messenger approached. "Correspondence from London, sir." Benjamin took the letter, and Charlotte saw his body tense slightly as he recognized the handwriting. "It's from Thomas." Charlotte felt the old instinct of fear but pushed it aside. Thomas no longer had power over them. "What does he want?" Benjamin read silently, his expression turning thoughtful. Then he handed her the letter. Charlotte read, "Benjamin and Charlotte, I write from Liverpool, where I am rebuilding my life far from the society that banished me. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I would like to say that seeing you together that last day, I understood what I never had, something worth being better for. My mother visited me. She said you married. She said Charlotte is expecting a child. Congratulations, from the heart. May this child know only love, never manipulation. May you build the family I helped destroy. Forgiveness is too much to ask, but peace. I hope you find it." Thomas. Charlotte read it twice, processing. "Should I respond?" Benjamin held her hand. "That is completely up to you. But remember, he stole 6 years from us. He doesn't need to steal a single minute more." Charlotte looked at the letter, then at her belly where a new life was growing, then at Benjamin, the man she had chosen to love every day. She stood, went into the room, and threw the letter into the fireplace. Watched the flames consume the words. "I thought you would forgive him," Benjamin said softly from the doorway. Charlotte returned to him, climbing onto his lap when he sat again. "I did forgive him. But forgiving doesn't mean letting him back into my life. We already have too much destiny to take care of." Benjamin pulled her closer, his hand caressing her belly. "Too much destiny? You, me, our child." She smiled mischievously. "And maybe a few more after this one. How many are you planning exactly?" "As many as it takes to fill this house with noise, chaos, and love." Benjamin laughed, that free laughter she loved so much. "You once said you wouldn't marry in your first season. And you said you wouldn't marry until you discovered who you were." He kissed her slowly, tenderly. "I discovered it. I was the man who loved you. Who always loved you. Who always will love you. Even when I'm impossible? Especially then. Dinner is ready." Lady Agatha's voice came from the house. The aunt had moved into a wing of the estate months earlier, refusing to stay in London when all the fun was happening here. "And yes," Agatha continued, appearing at the door with an apron, "I made your apple pie, Charlotte. Because apparently pregnant women rule this house." Charlotte laughed. "Witty aunts rule too." Agatha smiled, her eyes shining. "Call us rebels. Call us scandal. We call ourselves destiny." Benjamin stood, lifting Charlotte carefully into his arms because of the baby. "What are you doing?" "Carrying you to dinner." "It's tradition." "What tradition?" "The one I just invented." Charlotte laughed, completely happy as he carried her inside. After dinner, while Agatha retired to her rooms and the house grew quiet, Benjamin and Charlotte went upstairs. She sat on the bed while he lit the candles, filling the room with a soft golden glow. "Dance with me," he asked suddenly. "Benjamin, I'm 6 months pregnant and exhausted." "I know. Dance with me anyway." There was no music, but he drew her into his arms, and they began to move slowly around the warm room, turning in lazy circles. "Do you know what I realized today?" he murmured against her hair. "What?" "That you are exactly as I always imagined. Since the first time I saw you trying to climb that tree at 8 years old." Charlotte pulled back slightly to look at him. "What do you mean?" "Brave, stubborn, beautiful, impossible to ignore." He smiled. "You've always been the lady of my dreams, Charlotte. Even when I didn't know I was dreaming of you. Even when I tried to forget you. Even when I thought I had lost you forever." Tears filled her eyes. "Benjamin." "No," he continued gently. "Let me finish. You are the lady of my dreams. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because you challenge me. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I look at you, I see the home I always longed for." Charlotte clung to him, crying now. "I love you so much it hurts sometimes." "I know. I do too." They stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other, swaying gently in the candlelight. Later they lay down together. Benjamin picked up the Shakespeare book, the same one from the bookshop now marked with notes in the margins where they had debated the poems, and began to read. His voice was low, hypnotic. Charlotte felt her eyes growing heavy. "Benjamin, do you think our child will have your eyes or mine?" "Doesn't matter, as long as they have your heart and your courage." He closed the book, kissing her forehead. "They'll have it all, because they'll be born from something no one could destroy. Not time, not distance, not lies." "Love," Charlotte whispered, almost asleep. "Love," he confirmed. She fell asleep in his arms, a smile on her lips. Benjamin stayed awake a little longer, watching her. The way the candlelight danced across her red hair, the curve of her belly where their child was growing, the peace in her face. He rose quietly, went to the window. Outside, under the moonlight, the great oak stood tall, silent witness to everything. The first kiss, the painful separation, the reunion, the proposal. And there, carved into the trunk months ago, two intertwined initials glowed beneath the silver light. C+B 1751. "Infinity. 7 years since I first declared myself," Benjamin whispered to the night. "Every second of waiting was worth it." He returned to the bed, lay down beside Charlotte, and pulled her into his arms. Even in sleep, she curled against him, as if their bodies knew they belonged together. and as Benjamin closed his eyes, his last thought before sleep was simple. He was finally home. Not the home of stone and timber, but the home that was her laughter, her strength, her presence. Charlotte Harcourt, his wife, his partner, his best friend, the lady of his dreams, forever. If destiny carried us to this ending, it is because hearts that endure always find their way back. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. Subscribe to the channel and keep living every love story that never fades.